Well, this was a very intense piece of work. There's a little detail about this IPO. We were pretty much in lockdown from the beginning to the end. So the whole run-up to the IPO was done virtually. This is probably one of the first 100% virtual IPOs. This IPO was done out of several hundred kitchens, guest bedrooms, living rooms, a children's room, behind PCs and cameras. I often say we were out there selling sunscreen under the rain. So everybody knows they need sunscreen. Everybody knows buying sunscreen is a very good investment. But when it's raining, that's not what you think about first.
Mein Name ist Bastian Timm. Herzlich willkommen zum Corporate Finance Award Podcast Nachgefragt, der Börsenzeitung in Partnerschaft mit PwC. Vantage Towers gewinnt in diesem Jahr in der Kategorie IPO. Ja, was war das für ein spannender Börsengang für CEO Vivek Badrinath und sein Team? Nicht nur, dass der gesamte IPO-Prozess aufgrund der Corona-Pandemie bis zum Ende virtuell stattfinden musste. Mit Blick auf die Zahlen war es auch der mit Abstand größte Börsengang im letzten Jahr. Denn beim Börsendebüt war Vantage Towers 12,5 Milliarden Euro wert. Wie CEO Vivek Badrinath den IPO-Prozess persönlich erlebt hat und welche Herausforderungen und Erfolgsfaktoren den Börsengang ausgemacht haben, hat er mir Anfang April in der Düsseldorfer Zentrale berichtet.
So Vivek, March 18th, 2021, you're smiling. What are your memories about the IPO day when Vantage Towers celebrated Germany's largest stock market debut since 2018?
Yes, it was a big day for us. We were in this room, all together, holding our breath. And holding our breath because for the team that built an IPO, that's a moment of truth. First of all, it's a moment of truth because it's the culmination of a lot of work that we did together. But it's also the first real answer of the market, because you've had the theory, you've had the pricing exercises, you've done all sorts of simulations, but this is reality. This is the confrontation on the floor of the Frankfurt Stock Exchange of supply and demand for our stock. And hence the direction it takes at the beginning of that day has some significance. And it went well. So it was a great relief and a great success. And we felt very good.
So it sounds like a bit like you were a bit nervous up front?
Always, because at the end, it's the investors who decide and they vote with their money. And I think at those moments, you realize that however much you prepare, however many experts you have with you to work on the IPO, however much you're convinced about your company and the value it has, it is for the market to decide whether they feel that it's true or not.
Right. And sometimes it can be a roller coaster, entering the capital market.
Indeed.
So although there was strong investors' appetite, the shares were sold at the lower price range. So the final price was 24 euros. Were you a bit disappointed about this first pricing?
Look, we were at a period of the world economy which was quite troubled. The interest rates under pressure, going up. Still the tail end of a pandemic, or not quite the tail end, as we can know from what happened afterwards in 2021. I often say we were out there selling sunscreen under the rain.
Okay.
So everybody knows they need sunscreen. Everybody knows buying sunscreen is a very good investment. But when it's raining, that's not what you think about first. And look, the journey since then has proven that indeed our business model, our growth perspectives, our approach to the market itself for tower infrastructure are all things that can lift us up. And 1 year after the IPO, we were more than 30% above the initial price. So I think the investors who made that choice on that day made a very good choice.
You're right. Before we discuss this in more in depth, there are also some rumors at the moment that there's even more appetite from the private equity side. You know, your stock was raising. Can you comment on this? Or?
I can't really comment because shareholders do, once again, what they want with their money. But I think it proves one thing, that we've been consistent. The stock price shows it. The value of the company is clear, thanks to the stock market. So price discovery, if you want to call it that way, has been done by the best means possible, which is the market. And it proves our point, which is infrastructure will grow in Europe. We allow sharing. We've got great customers that have very long-term contracts with us, so a very stable cash flow, and that's got value. And above that, we have growth. We have growth through inflation indexation, through the fact that we add new tenants to our towers, and we've been commercially very active in this direction. And then we also are able to build new sites, which will also increase the footprint and also do a lot of good to all the regions where we now bring infrastructure where it was not before.
So to sum it up, a very resilient business with also a very interesting growth perspective, right?
That's why it's exciting to be in this business. It's because it's a combination of resilience of your cash flows, growth, and the opportunity to invest. We have the opportunity to deploy capital across 8-10 geographies in Europe where it's needed. And when we deploy capital, we know that we're going to get paid for it, because we only deploy capital when we have customers who have said, I would like a tower here, build it for us. So our model is a very good way to put money at work into something that's useful, that has very predictable returns over a very long-term period.
Right. So the IPO also involved a private placement to 2 institutional shareholders. How important are these 2 anchor investors for Vantage Towers from a strategic point of view?
I'd say we have a very good relationship with these investors. Digital Colony on one hand and our RJ on the other. And they're both very supportive of our actions. They know this area. And they've had 2 benefits. One is this ongoing, I would say, interest in us. And also the proof point, also to the market 1 year ago, that professionals who know this sector well felt that they could put sizable investments into Vantage Towers.
Right.
And they anchored, as the word goes, they anchored our placement.
And they also maybe give some confidence to other investors if you have these investors on board, right?
Exactly, because they know this area, they know this sector well, and they bought into our story.
Right. So let's discuss the story. What were the reasons for the IPO?
Well, we felt that the time had come in Europe for towers to evolve. When we started our journey, less than 50% of the towers in Europe were in towercos. At that point in time, a number of big groups in Europe started to ask themselves the question. And a number of events happened. The Vodafone Group decided that its towers would be better in an independent vehicle that could market its assets to more customers, because that would deliver a better return on this asset, which was initially only destined or largely destined only to Vodafone. The Telefonica Group sold all its towers to American Towers in Spain and Germany. The Hutch Group sold all its towers in Europe to Cellnex. And so I think the train was leaving the station, and this was the right timing to think about a tower company, and accessing the capital markets in this way was a good way to prepare Vantage Towers for future growth.
Right, okay. So what approach did you use to prepare and to execute the IPO?
Well, this was a very intense piece of work. Why? Because you need a lot of experts at the top of their game. You need good lawyers, because each of these carve-outs means that you're taking out assets from an existing organization, hosting them into a new company, standing up that company, building it, and taking it all the way up to the standards that the market naturally expects in terms of governance, transparency, monitoring, compliance that you would want in a listed company. So great lawyers, great finance experts, great bankers, great accountants, because we are creating a company out of assets and we have to build the history. that will convince investors that our operations will deliver what they're expected to deliver. So great level of expertise, big teams, long hours, times 8 countries, which means that in every country, different legal systems, different tax systems, different land registries, because we transfer real estate type of assets in many cases. And we brought all this expertise together to assemble Vantage Towers AG.
What about the expertise of communications department to create inspiring capital market story and also to communicate it?
Then there's all the departments, indeed. Communications for the capital markets, for the press, because this was, as you mentioned, one of the bigger IPOs in the history in Europe. In 2021, the third largest, and in Germany, the largest since 2018. So quite an event that you need to explain, and you're new, because this is the first listed tower company. We chose Frankfurt, very happy having done that. And we had to explain a company that was pretty short in its history, but yet had assets that in some cases were had been there for quite a long time. And then you have other teams, HR, you have to create an organization, and you have people who were working on these assets before, but you have lots of people and talent that come from other organizations. Why? Because you're trying to create a new company. So you need new ideas, new expertise, new knowledge that comes from other sectors. And that's just a small part of all the people who contributed to the story.
Right. And if you enter the capital market, you always have to have a good timing, right? Because if the capital markets is not, if there's no real appetite, capital markets, is going down. If there's a bear market, there's not a good time then for IPO. So how happy were you that the timing was okay for you when you entered the market?
I think it worked for us. And, it's the beginning of a journey. The IPO day, as I said, we held our breath. There was a bit of anxiety. The timing was what it was, but the share price rose on the first day, and since then it's been a very decent journey on the back of delivering what we said we would deliver at the IPO. We're on the same track, and I think that consistency is what will pay off over time. Already 30% growth, which is one of the higher growth rates and we entered the Stock 600, we entered the MDAX during this journey, we entered the Tech DAX, which means that our credibility is getting stronger and stronger on the stock market.
Right. So what was the biggest challenge then, if you think about preparing the IPO? Was it to create a team that has really the best heads in it and the highest motivation, or what was
There's a little detail about this IPO. We were pretty much in lockdown from the beginning to the end. So the whole run-up to the IPO was done virtually. This is probably one of the first 100% virtual IPOs. And that includes investor interaction, the Capital Markets Day, the early look meetings with investors, the stand-up itself, which means the whole organization of the company, the recruitment of pretty much 2/3 of the employees happened to a large extent remotely, and many employees came to the office for the first time well after the IPO. This IPO was done out of several hundred kitchens, guest bedrooms, living rooms, children's room, we're behind PCs and cameras, and that delivered this outcome, which I think is pretty remarkable.
Absolutely, yes, you're absolutely right. So you had a virtual roadshow with investors, and which is also, it's always a lot about credibility and trust, right? If you, as an investor, invest in a company, and it's very, very important for many investors to have some eye contact, some personal contact. So, what do you think? What was the success factor that this went well, your virtual roadshow?
Well, look, at the end, it is almost like a sales process. You're trying to explain to someone that they can invest in your company, and I think our product is healthy. Vantage Towers has a sturdy business model. It has growth potential. It has a governance which has the right standards. It is a listed company following all the rules and principles of the stock market in Germany, which is a location where credibility is very strong. And yes, we managed to overcome the handicap of not being able to meet face-to-face. That 100% of our investors invested after a video meeting. And I think that's a sign that we had a convincing story that was well prepared, and indeed well delivered to the market, that was convincing enough for investors to take interest.
Okay, so what did you do then on the IPO day itself?
Well, actually, we didn't ring the bell because the COVID restrictions made it impossible to go on the floor. But we did even better. As you know, that ringing the bell exercise is usually more the management goes on stage. It's a prestige moment. And for us, it was a together moment. We told our teams, find a bell in your house. So we had people from Bavaria with cowbells. And we had people from seaside areas with bells that came from ships. And we had little bells and big bells and lots of instruments to make noise. And we filmed them all. And that became our company sounding the bell. It was a very touching moment, something that means a lot to me, that actually the whole company rang the bell.
So somehow you created your corporate culture. You further developed the feeling of who is Vantage Towers. You created a new feeling maybe for your employees?
I think so. Look, in many cases for an organization, an adventure, like working all together towards one goal, which is delivering an IPO, which means each person in their role has to do their best. Because at the end, it's when you bring all this together that you have a company, and that company can be taken to the market and presented to investors saying, invest in this company. I think when you have a goal like that, it brings people together. They've worked well, they've worked hard, but they've cooperated to make something happen. So I think it was important that they all rang the bell together.
What kind of bell did you ring?
I rang a very big boat bell.
But I can imagine during this period there were some moments when you were not so sure if everything works out like you planned?
We have put our best foot forward. You know, I always think if you do your best, well, after that, why worry? You know, and we had a very strong team, lots of very talented people working very hard, long hours, going into detail, leaving no detail on the side. Why? Because we had to convince, and to convince you cannot be, imprecise. So we had this very tight focus on the exactness of what we stated, checking, rechecking. And so we had, I would say, the ammunition, the information, the data that allowed us to confidently go in front of the market without any fear. And with that, you can make things happen.
Mm-hmm. So what were the success factors, if you think about maybe 3? What would you name?
I would say the team, because we had great experts, people who really know their art, be it valuation, be it documentation, be it communication, be it investor relations, be it, and I think particularly of the bankers who helped us to build this, and in particular our global coordinators and the more junior parts of our bank syndicate, as we were quite a sizable IPO and lots of banks supported us. I would say their constant advice, their knowledge of the investor community, their ability to steer us, guide us, were a strong success factor. So internal and external team of experts with good support from advisors who also helped us to structure the program and so on. Second thing, the product. We have a business model. We think this is attractive, in particular for those who believe that infrastructure is a healthy area to invest in, especially when returns are secured over a long period. And so there is patient capital that understands that this business is about, I would say, long-term growth for the economy, that it's relevant, that it's useful. And so there is attraction for this sector and for this business model, which is a good combination of security, growth, and capital deployment. And I would say the third thing is probably simply the permanent support of our customers, of our majority shareholder who wanted this done and who didn't waver, who gave us the autonomy to get Vantage Towers off the ground, and supported us in driving this process as well. Because for them it was also some work, because they were selling the shares, and they didn't waver along the journey and supported us all along. So I'd say consistency in the execution.
Okay. And how important is it for the future development of Vantage Towers?
Look, being a listed company, having the access to the capital markets, and now day after day building more track record, being in more indices, which means being more relevant to the investor community, means that we approach the evolution of the infrastructure sector in Europe with a lot of confidence, with the confidence that we can chart our journey, that the capital market will support us, that if we want to do something big and interesting, if we want to deploy more money to invest more, to create more returns on broader territories or on more sites in a given territory, we have the ability to go out there and to hear the market for that.
And from a personal point of view, also from an emotional point of view, how did you experience this virtual IPO in the preparation, and was it a roller coaster road for you, or how was it?
No, it was more like it's a marathon, but you know the goal. You know you want to do it in March 2021. And you've kind of set the date. You know there's a lot of work to get there. I mean, that milestone table would have covered a full wall of a boardroom, of all the things that needed to be done on time, with no mistakes, to reach the goalpost. So at one point you just become very focused. There were times where the virtual environment made it a bit unreal. You kind of feel, all I've done today from morning to night is sit in front of a screen, talking to people, interacting with people, making decisions in some cases on how to shape the proposal, or convincing investors of the interest of our story. And you kind of wonder, is this enough? Being behind a screen, is it just a very strange theater? But no, it wasn't a theater. The money came in, the people were there, and the transactions happened, and everything that we had planned got executed in the real world. And then when we got back together after the pandemic had reduced a bit, you realize, well, now you have a company.
So basically then you switched from the virtual, maybe the unreal, the unsafe world, to the real world, and then you were amazed how everything smoothly worked out? Yeah,
I think it's a sign of the importance of what we do. It's a very reassuring sign that you're able to do something so complex, which mobilizes so many people across so many geographies. You're actually able to execute it. Thanks to what? Thanks to remote communications. Thanks to the availability of broadband across Europe. Thanks to the fact that you're able to reach investors in the US, in Australia, in Singapore, in Hong Kong, to discuss with them your investments or their opportunities. And you're able to do this remotely because they have connectivity. And I think it gives you a double boost that what you're doing is useful, because it enables economic wealth creation, it enables activity, it enables people to do their business without having to be in the same room. And I think that's also a very a double thank you to ourselves for that.
Right. Because you're enabling this.
Exactly.
With your technology. Vantage Towers is part of...
Somewhere part of this big ecosystem, indeed. Yeah.
Exactly, yes. Yeah, Vivek, I mean, we have a new situation in the world, we have to say, since February 24th. Russia attacked Ukraine. We have war in Europe. So what are the implications for your business, and how did you observe and feel with this situation personally?
Well, for me, like for many of our colleagues and the people around us, it's a big shock. And it's a very sad situation. For us, it created a mobilization, a very quick one from our organization. Our colleagues in Romania, in Hungary, stepped up and offered their support, of course, with the operators in those countries to welcome the refugees, to give them infrastructure so that they could communicate. We put temporary installations, and there was instant mobilization of our organization. They also contributed personally to, through funding, some of the associations that supported the refugees. So that's the first thing. That's the things that we can do in our space, because we are privileged to have a business that is there to fund our activity. And of course, this war will have consequences. It will have consequences on the economy. It will have consequences that we can start to observe on the global supply chain, on the cost of certain raw materials, the cost of energy, which we are sheltered from to a certain extent because we are passed through on energy. It's the operators who consume the active equipment's power. But nevertheless, it has an impact on the sector. It has the impact on the I would say the performance of our customers. And so it is important for us that, of course, first and foremost, peace returns to us very, very fast. And second, that these consequences are transitory in nature.
Right. And it also shows that communication is important for the people there. Even Elon Musk helped out with his satellite technology, right?
Yeah, I think the communication for the people to stay in touch with their loved ones when they're separated is extremely important. So the little things we can do modestly in our space through the business that we run, we of course are always ready to stand up and do.
Thank you.
Pleasure.